Welcome to I Know a Guy Bicycles, hanging out with the guy. Hi, I'm Justin the guy. Techniques get scary how to use one bike at a time. So today I'm going to go over a couple bullet points. Are you ready for this season? Are you? Always catches us in the back end when we're trying to do something that we're passionate about, right? Like, so you go, like you're in season, you're like, oh, I should have got a tune-up on this. Like, oh, okay, now it's in season, and now you're waiting several weeks to get it repaired, and it's costing you twice as much. Well, here, this is the time, and the time is now for the cycling season. So this is what I'm trying to bring across. Are you ready? Are you ready for that new bike? Are you ready for getting that bike tuned up? Are you ready with clothes, nutrition, accessories, tubes, all those kinds of things? So we're going to go over a couple of those things right now. No further ado. Topic number one is going to be tune-ups. What do you need in a tune-up? What equates to a need of a tune-up? When the last you rode your bike, was it recently or was it a few months back? Could be a few months back. You just need to air up the tires and lube the chain, and you're good to go. Or did you have some shifting issues or braking, or the tires are constantly leaking, or the tires are rubbing against the brake pads? There's various other things to look into when you're looking at a need for a tune-up, and what level of tune-up too, because every bike shop you go to is going to have multiple levels of tune-ups. So where's the best package for you? Well, talking to the tech, that's one thing. That's great. They'll try to guide you in the right direction. But remember this, those techs are also, or service writers are there to add on better, more service and more parts and so forth. So it's good to ask those questions, and the right questions when you get into that service department. Have those things already listed in your mind. And also try to direct the issues, or try to basically tell in best detail of the issues you have had when you're riding, and write them down when you go in. Reason being, you don't want to forget anything, because the service rider is there for you to basically try to get your ride into the best tip-top shape. And if you're not communicating that creak or the tick or the weird noise, or it's not shifting here or a brake or what have you, they may not get in that tune-up. It might be missed over or passed over, and 9 times out of 10 they'll catch it, but sometimes not. And then it's a lose-lose, right? You go in, you pay a whole bunch of money and get it fixed up, go on that first ride, that same annoying tick is still there or whatever. So you want to make sure you have a list of issues that you want to address when you walk into that shop. For those, the good element for any ride is, number one, is your A, B, and C's: air, brake, and chain. What that means is check your air as a holding pressure. And when I mean holding pressure, during the whole length of a ride. Tubes will lose air over a period of time. So if you haven't ridden it for a couple months, it's going to be low. So it doesn't mean you need a new tube or anything of that right off the bat. But if it's flat from the ride from yesterday, yes, you'll need to have a repair or a tube or what have you. So check your air. And also, having proper air pressure in your tires will actually give you a better ride, longer ride, also protect those parts, rims specifically. If you let it roll too long, without, no pun intended, with a lower pressure, you hit that one pothole or curb just right, boom, ding, you dinged your rim, and there's a couple $100 that you're going to have to fork out to fix it or replace it, that kind of thing. So air is very important. Second thing would be brakes. Brakes is a safety thing, but you want to make sure it's like, you turn, let's say you fix that flat in the garage and you forgot to put the quick release back down for the brakes to engage properly, or they're rubbing against. It's always good to double check them, make sure the wheels are spinning smoothly and not rubbing up against the brake pads or discs. Same thing, rubbing against the brake pads, that kind of thing. You want to make sure you have the equal pressure, because lo and behold, that first ride, you might be going downhill pretty quick on the first part of your ride, and you're like, oh, I don't have very many brakes. And that's a very big safety concern. C is chain. Has it been lubed? You don't have to lube it every time, but you want to lube it periodically to make sure the chain shifts smoothly through all those cogs. Also has a prevention there, as well as wearing out and so forth. So if the drivetrain is lubed correctly, and then you'll actually lengthen the life of your chain and cassette and all those things too, which is great to have. So those will definitely help out. So between the A, B, and C's, those are the things you want to check on every ride. But when you're diving into needing a tune-up and so forth, let's say if you just need a tube fixed or something like that, that doesn't warrant a tune-up. But if your wheels are out of true because of braking, or the chain or cassette is not shifting or what have you, or the cables feel weird or something like that, that you might want to get into the first level tune-up that may have as a bike shop, or maybe a bump up to the next, depending what they find. Basically, when the service writer looks at a bike, they're going through it and double checking it. Granted, it's not a fine tooth comb in a sense like you are riding the bike. They don't have that experience, but at that moment. But anyway, if you have that list of concerns that you bring to them and they're checking these things, they may bring something up that you may have not known about, which is that's what they're really paid to do. Also, it's usually a safety thing. You want to make sure it's properly and safe from that perspective. So yeah, you want to definitely look at those ABCs. Kind of like one or two of those things, maybe just need an adjustment when you go into a shop. Maybe they can take care of that, or you can Google it and do a YouTube video watch and see if you can adjust it yourself. I'm always been an advocate of try something else for adjustments, so forth yourself. And if you do need to take to the shop, go to the shop. They'll go through it. And sometimes those minor adjustments they can do on the fly. But those other bigger ones, I escalate into a tune-up, you might have to leave your bike. So I would say check those ABCs, and if it's like an A or B or B or C or C or A, maybe a D, definitely take it in and have them evaluate, and then you'll be expecting. So that goes to my next bullet point. It's like, what do you expect for costs? A tune-up is going to be basically covering the labor of the tech working on the bike. It's usually not going to cover the cost of the parts that are going to be replaced. So keep that in mind when you actually have to work on it or have it worked on. And you might have to have a tube. Tubes are like $5 to $10, depending where you're at. Cables, couple, $2, $3, $4, depending where you're at as well. So those things can kind of add up. So I like to think about it as like, well, I'm thinking about I'm going to be spending, I see this tune-up package. It's going to cost me $60. And if you really enjoy riding and so forth, you want to have those things addressed. Not to be overly addressed in the sense like be upsell on something you don't need, which is, it does happen out there, unfortunately. But you want to have at least those basics covered. So I would say if your tune-up 60 and you put $60 into it for parts, you're pretty good. If it's, so you're thinking about 120, 150, that's actually a pretty good standard on those. But if it's astronomical heavy on parts, then they add labor on each one of those parts without kind of a general warrant to it, then that's where it can get really expensive. So keep that in mind. So when you're looking at those, eyedropper catching, $50 off a tune-up, keep in mind they're going to try to make that up somewhere else. Sometimes, unless if it's in season, yes, they're going to try to make it up herself. This time of year, this is being shot in February, at the end of February, and this is why I'm really kind of addressing this. This is probably your last week of really taking or capitalizing on those tune-up discounts, because right now they're really slow, and the bike shop service departments have their best techs just kind of sitting around, trying to keep busy. And if you bring in those repairs, that's where the prices go down in the wintertime. The $50 or $25 kind of bait to get you in to bring that bike in to be serviced, this is a great time to do it. Number one, you get a little bit of discount, which is great. Second, usually you have the better techs on staff this time of year because you don't have the seasonal people in yet. And the next March or April, that's when they start bringing in those seasonal people back, or if they have them on staff, they bring more up to full time. So you have more experienced mechanics and techs working on your bikes at this time. So this is the prime time to get the best value of the tune-up and the best value of the discount for that tune-up, which is great. So the time is now, because when it gets in the season, hey, guess what? You'll need that tune-up, and it's in June. Well, you're paying the premium price, and you can be paying the premium on parts, and you're going to pay the premium on time, because time is, they get 2-3 weeks behind. If they don't have an appointment program, you might be out of your bike for a while. So that's something you want to consider on tune-ups in itself on that aspect. So, okay. So we talked about your current bike. and what we need to do to get it ready. And it's always good to like do that shopping right now. If you need extra tubes, an extra pack, maybe another new windbreaker, that kind of thing, this is the time of year to do it, because a lot of those companies have extra surplus from the season from last year. This year is very specific to that because the demand was so high. Now they overproduce, so a lot of those things are just kind of wait for you to buy at a discount. So this is the time of year to pick and grab those things: extra gloves, helmet, shoes, those kinds of things. That's a great time to do it. But what if you're ready to buy that next new ride or new used ride to you? This is a pretty good time too, because this is a time when if it's new, they're starting to get that inventory in for the preseason. They're getting it all built up. So this is probably when the bike shops are the most fat in inventory. And that gives you the best selection without having to wait to be special ordered and wait for several weeks for it to come in, especially if you're looking at the upper end, higher end stuff. Um, and then when you're looking at that higher level, I'm talking about like, the $2,000 to $3,000 to $4,000 level. This is, if you've already invested, you're like, that's what I want, which is great. There's a lot of benefits to buying a new bike from a bike shop, from like warranties and service packages afterwards and that kind of thing. Same kind of concept as a new car. But when you're looking at the time of year, this is the best time of the year to buy those. Grant, they're not discounted, and they're not going to be on sale unless it's a last year's model, which we're in a weird kind of predicament. Some of those models still might be a pretty good deal right now for new. They may have a 2022 sitting on there waiting to be bought by you. But if you're specifically looking for something like a certain model or a make, and you read up on a magazine, I want this one, if they have it, buy it. It's one of those things you'll be kicking yourself down the road, because those bikes will disappear because they'll be popular, and you'll never be able to find it again until you see it in the used market 5-10 years down the road. But that's when you're looking for new. When you're looking for used, this is also, we've gotten ourselves in this very unique situation here in 2023. COVID, prices went up, bikes disappeared. All of a sudden you're like scrambling, trying to find something. Now they overbuilt. And now the interest on a lot of these bikes have dived down. So the used market for me, when I'm looking for used bikes, I'm able to find better quality stuff out there. It's not priced outrageously. The prices are starting to go down, and they're sticking around a little bit longer, which is good too. When you get into season, it will get, it will pick up and be a little busier. Bikes might fly a little bit faster, but the overall prices have actually dropped down, which has been really, really super nice. So that really helps you as a consumer looking for a used one. And those are the things that, really make it easier to buy. But going to the top 5 things to look at, I have a top 20 list for looking at used. It goes into really super detail, very lengthy. It's a binge watching situation. But I also have a top 5. I figured it's just one video, top 5 things to look at. If you just you don't have the time, which, everybody knows you may not have the time, but there's 5 main things you want to look for when you're looking for a used bike, as well as new. Parts of this kind of apply. And number 1 is fit. Fit is the biggest thing. You want to make sure that bike fits you correctly. So if you're looking at a bike online on Craigslist or Marketplace and so forth, Pink Bike is another one, or even on eBay, and you see that bike like, oh, that's a nice bike, that's a great price, fits my budget, this is the kind of bike I want. Well, look at that brand, look at that fit, and look at that model year and fit charts. You can Google those charts up and see where that kind of fits in that realm, and then you can determine if that particular bike is for your height range. Is a good start. So if you're like me, I'm a 5'11", but some bikes I fit really good on a 58 centimeter. Some are 57. 60s are usually way too big for me. So it's a really finite difference between the two, as in sizes, like only like a couple centimeters, which will make a big, completely different, ride experience. So you want to keep that in mind, and always try on a little bit smaller than bigger. It's just easier to adjust a smaller bike to a taller person versus you can't go down. It's just the top tube length gets all weird. You'll find that out when you go into the fitting perspective of it. But do your homework on that particular model. So if you're looking at 3 different bikes and they're 3 different models, like a Specialized, a Trek, and a Giant, a couple different years, get yourself a little schooled on sizing and how it's going to fit, and if it's the right size for you. And if it's not the right size for you, as your preliminary look, it doesn't matter how good a deal it is, it has to fit you. Because I can't tell you how many times I've bought bikes from people that bought a bike on the whim, thinking it was their size, and turned out it wasn't, and they had a bad experience, and now lo and behold, they're selling it to me. So fit is the biggest number one thing you want to research when you're looking at that used bike. Then when you go check out that new to you used bike, there's three other things you want to look at of the top five. The frame and fork, making sure it's smooth, it doesn't have like any cracks, big chips, damage, that kind of thing. That's a big yay or nay situation. If you notice there's something funky on the frame itself, just walk away. It's not worth it, because I've had frames that had chips that turned out to be damaged carbon, cracks, those kinds of things. As for yourself, you're just looking for a bike to ride. I'm going to part it out and piece it and whatever I need to do to work for me. But you don't want to be in a situation where you have a bum frame and now you're trying to sell for parts. So the frame and fork, inspect it, take a rag, wipe it down, make sure those dirty parts are not a crack, that kind of thing. The second part of that is componentry. Now it's going to be the lower cost lift if you need to replace a derailleur or a brake or brake pads or something of that nature. That's something that's at the spectrum. It's you can probably get that bike and still be able to fix those things, but the frame and the fork, it's going to be too costly heavy. So when it's the componentry, you can probably afford a new chain or cassette or cables and housing, which is sometimes usually need to be replaced, or either grips or bar tape, depending what bike you're looking at. Those are pretty low cost lifts. So componentry, you want to look it over. Also the wheels. Inspect those wheels, make sure the wheels are straight and true, they don't have any cracks in them and those kinds of things. I have several videos on wheels, check those out. That'll help you out with trying to determine if those wheels are safe to ride and what have you. That's another expensive lift. So if the wheels are bad and the frame's good and the componentry is okay, well, the wheels can cost you $200-300 just by themselves. Then you have to pay for somebody to install that's because the cassette and that part usually uses specialty tools to switch those out or to install them. So keep that in mind when you're looking at that used bike. The wheels are pretty important. Just don't glance over those. And the fifth thing is it test rideable? I mean, is it ready to test ride? Can you show up with your helmet ready to go? And if the bike is like flat tires, all dusty and grimy, just walk away. It's not going to be worth your time and cost of putting into it, because there's going to be too many unknowns on that. If it is able to test ride, go through the gears, see if it fits. Hopefully there's an Allen wrench. You can adjust the saddle or quick release. You can adjust the saddle closely to appropriate size. Try to give that a ride. And if you're not riding back without a smile on your face, walk away. It's one of those things that you don't want to pay for in the long run, because you're not going to get into it and it's going to be a bad experience. As me trying to take the scary out of used, I refurbish all my bikes, and I do have a fit area when I sell them locally. And if somebody rides a bike and they're not on the fence on it, it's like, I'm not going to sell you a bike until you come back with a smile on your face. It's one of those things. I want to make sure you're in the best position possible. And that's the same thing for yourself when you're looking at a used bike. You want to go out there with the best experience possible, and because unfortunately, about 80% of those bikes out there that are used, to 90%, are not safe to ride. They definitely, from a tech perspective, they're going to need some work. You may be lucky to get that other 8% out there that are rideable, but they maybe need something, maybe a light tune-up or a tire tube or something. There's only 2% out there that are immaculate, that don't really need anything. So keep that in mind. You think you're lucky at the 2%? Well, the 2% is usually not at the lower end of the pet spectrum either. So if you're looking a little more expensive, you might find that. But if you're looking for your $300 to $400 used mountain bike, road bike, the 2% is going to be very rare. It's going to be definitely the unicorn sweet spot. So those are the 5 things to look for when you're looking for that used bike. And compared to new, well, new, you get warranties, you get sometimes a service package. You are paying a higher premium, but it is a little bit nicer to have that. It's kind of like, we lease new cars ourselves. So it's one of those things where you don't have to worry, breakdowns and that kind of thing. If you're that kind of perspective, you pay a little bit more up front, but you don't pay over a layer of time. Same thing if you buy a used car, you're going to have to put money into it. So think about that as a used bike too. So when you have a used bike, okay, that used bike, I have $500 budget. Okay, and that's top end. Well, you know you're going to need to get some stuff, even though you may not need a tune-up or whatever. You're still going to need to put $100 into it at least for like tires, cable or grips, maybe a cable or something like that, and also pedals. Because a lot of those other used bikes have like clipless pedals, and may not be the brand that you use, or you don't use clipless at all, and you need to buy platforms. So that's going to be those things, the contact point, and also a saddle. Saddles might be something that's kind of like shoes that fits everybody differently. That's going to be another additional cost you have to worry about at some other point in that aspect of it too. So I cover the first two things. Are you ready for the season? Bike tune-ups, what do you need to do your current bike, what to do for you're looking for a new to you or used bike or new bike there. And the third thing I want to cover mainly is the shop. What bike shop do you gonna take it to? For the tune-up or look for a new bike, or even a new, shops sell used bikes too. What shop are you gonna take it to? You've never been into a bike shop before, or it's been forever since you've been to a bike shop. Bike shops have evolved and changed for the last 30 years, and especially since my mom and pop shop days when I started back in '89. Whew, that makes me old. But anyway, there's a lot of changes in the shops over the years. And recently, in the last 5 to 10 years, there's been a pretty big split. The split is either you've gone to more of a bigger chain style shops, like Trek and specialized corporate owned stores or REI, that kind of thing. Then you still have your kind of mom pop or a little bit bigger shops. And then you really do have your little niche little bike shops. So you got to kind of, obviously demographics is really going to be a big issue. So you're in a small town, you may only have one or two options, if any. But if you're in a big city setting, you do have some options. And a couple of Googles of, bike shops near me will give you a laundry list. I pop up on there, but I'm not a full service shop. But I mean, it's one of those things, you can get an assessment around and try to vet those situations where you want to find a shop near you. Well, what I'm trying to get at is, like, it could be a REI or a Trek store, could be your shop. That is nothing wrong with them, and actually they do have some benefits to it. Or the smaller mom and pop shop, which was in my Parker Bikes days. Yeah, that might be a benefit for you too. So it all depends. And some of those niche shops have actually gone certain directions to support a certain part of the cycling community. Like, there's been shops that just do triathlons or more of the tri-based type of experience, or some are just mountain bike experience. And if you're in a mountain bike and you want to fall into that mountain bike kind of niche, or the family just recreational shop, and maybe that's the type of riding doing. So try to vet that direction of, like, okay, what am I looking for? Am I looking for a family shop, or am I looking for a high-end road shop or a mountain bike shop, that kind of thing. So that's going to be your kind of your first glance over on different shops, and you'll be able to see a lot on either their websites or Google reviews and that kind of thing of what kind of direction they're going. And then you ask yourself, what's your needs? Like, are you just mainly just going to need some tune-ups and repairs and that kind of thing? Well, there's some shops that are just specifically heavy on repairs, and they're very, very good at that, which is great. Or some shops may not be. They only have maybe one or two mechanics, and everything else is just selling inventory. So that's another thing we want to think about. So small shops versus big shops. Don't feel guilty going to the big bag chain store. Those are people too, and they have jobs and so forth. What I found, and I was kind of really miffed about the whole Trek buying a whole bunch of shops at first, and because coming from an independent bike dealer, that was kind of like against the grain. But after a few years into it and talking to some buddies that I have that do work at the Trek store, actually opened my eyes up in the sense that it gave them opportunities. In other words, they didn't hit the glass ceiling of the shop they were in. They were able to expand, go up the chain. They have benefits now. They have better pay, those kinds of things. So that environment is actually vetting better mechanics and better people in the industry and keeping them there, because for a long time we were losing people left and right because they just can't afford it. Living in its experience, it doesn't make you a whole bunch of money. Well, now it gives you an opportunity to make a living, and it provides those individuals. If you're a bike shop owner, that rubs you the wrong way totally, because now you're being undercutted by the big bad chain store. But as an employee level, perspective, that's where those things where you can go into a Trek store and find that good mechanics been around a while, and they'll do some good things, do things for you. It costs a little bit more because it is a corporate environment, and the pricing is pretty much same across the board. But you can get some of those corporate discounts too, in a sense. And right now they have $50 off of the level 2 or higher package, which pretty decent. They'll knock down that tune up to below $100, which is a pretty decent tune up, and they're pretty slow. So you'll get those decent mechanics working a little bit better price and so forth. And then if you're looking at the Trek bikes and that kind of thing, they are a little pricier, but if you're in that realm of looking, there you go. Same thing with the specialized stores as well. Not just picking one or other. It's just an example. So yeah, so you have that, or hopefully you can find, for me, heartstrings here, talking about your local shop. Having a family, you walk in and like, hey, I need this little problem. And my dad used to do this all the time. It was a little adjustments, so forth. Like, we'll charge you double next time. Don't worry about it. On the way you go. And that just gives you that warm hug, which I love trying to provide what I'm doing. And it's really nice to go into a shop where you walk in and they not just ask you if you're just looking for something. You're like, hey, how you doing? You've been riding a lot, whatever. It adds more personal level to it, which is kind of nice, versus just like, oh, let me show you this fancy $4,000 bike and let me see if I can get you to buy it. So, I like the smaller shop feel, and everybody kind of like, does everybody have like their own little restaurant they like to go to, which you get that kind of warm hug? And with bike shops, some of them have that. And you can find one in your area that has that, and you develop that relationship. Even though you may pay a little more, at least you feel like you're supporting a little more of the community experience, and you're getting more out of it. And the last thing, or another thing to think about too, is, do they have club rides? Or are they all just race heavy, or whatever that kind of fits your experience that you want to get into? That's another thing you want to find out about a bike shop. It's like, does it fit just not your pocketbook, but does it fit the experiences of riding? And also, do they do a lot of those club rides, the culture, that kind of thing? So that's another thing you want to think about when you're looking at betting that in a bike shop. And this is a good time to do it too now, because they're not really too busy. So they're going to actually talk to you. They're going to have like, they're going to, water cooler talk moments, like, hey, let's talk about this a little bit. I'm thinking about getting a new bike or a used bike. And they might be a little more warmly receptive to having those conversations, versus in season where they're just like, I'm a week, 2 week behind. I don't know what you want. It's like, it's one of those things. So this is a time of year too, when it's slower, to actually get a feel for those bike, the feel for the bike shop, and go to a couple different ones. Just don't land on one and go, oh, this is it. Go to a couple different ones, like, oh, this is, it might be a little bit further away, but it might be a better fit for you and your family, or what kind of riding you're doing. So those are like the main topics I want to go over today. Just to recap, do you have your gear? Is it ready? Is it set and tuned up and ready to go? Are you getting off your trainer bike and getting on your regular bike? That kind of thing. Are you ready for the next season? This should be a really good season. And are you looking for a new ride? Or start doing your homework, looking for used bikes? You don't have to buy one of those, still right here, still snow on the ground. I'm not going to buy it this week, but maybe next week, or looking at stuff. And if you find a good deal, that might be the time to do it. And then, find your shop, find your home away from home when you're cycling, that kind of thing, where I come from. But anyway, well, thank you for your time. Appreciate you hanging out with me. If you like these type of videos and whatever kind of bring the experience, like and subscribe. Until next time, have a great day. Thank you for your time.